Will this camera be the wildlife camera? Cutting edge technology, dramatic improvements, never before seen advancements to autofocus. These cameras are going to be adaptable to the individual user and how they photograph. There is going to be a system inside the camera that will tell us that it recognizes the species. 13 hours ago, Canon announced some pretty big news. Canon is in development of its EOS R1 flagship camera. Anyone who's been following me for the last few years knows that I've been waiting for this camera, as well as shooting with a 1DX Mark II in hopes that this camera will be coming soon as the new flagship camera. But the main question I have is, will this camera be the wildlife camera and outperform Nikon and Sony? We all know Canon has had plenty of time to put in the work and make the advancements that they need in order to outperform them. But with this press release, we don't really have a whole lot of information, but there are a few things that I can kind of gauge and take away at, and maybe read through the lines and maybe assume a little bit too much. But let's get into what this press release says and decide whether or not this is going to be the wildlife camera that is going to be released, hopefully in 2024. Now, in the first paragraph of the press release, there are two distinct phrases that stick out to me. One of them is cutting edge technology, and two is dramatic improvements. Now, the press release doesn't say exactly what dramatic improvements are going to be made or what the cutting edge technology actually is, but it does mention that it's going to be dramatically improved for sports, news, and video production, and is going to be a highly reliable camera for professionals. We could pretty much gather all that information because we have the R3, which does a lot of that stuff. So if we're looking at cutting edge technology and dramatically improving the camera outside of the R5 and the R3 that already perform at an incredible rate, what are the types of things that we're going to be looking at? One thing we know for sure is that the camera is going to employ a new Digic accelerator. This is in addition to the Digic X processor that is in the camera right now. It's also going to come with a new CMOS sensor, and what the Digic accelerator and the new sensor are going to do is going to be able to process large amounts of data. So this could be high frame per second rates, could be 8K footage, it could be a plethora of things, especially when they're talking about sports, news, and video production. One of the other things that they touched on that we all kind of assumed is that their autofocus was going to be improved. And one of the keywords that they put in the release is never before seen advancements to autofocus. So what could that mean? Now let's get into the meat of this release by what it's talking about when it comes to the autofocus technology. By combining the new image processing system that's going to be in this camera and deep learning, so we're talking artificial intelligence here, there's going to be an action priority mode. And what that means, now it breaks it down from a sporting perspective, but let's talk about it from a wildlife perspective. If you have in a sporting event one subject, they use soccer for example, you have someone in control of the soccer ball, they pass it to another teammate, the autofocus is going to follow to that next teammate. Now we go through the bushes here. Now wildlife, say you're shooting eagles and ospreys, or mature eagles or adult eagles and juveniles. One goes down, catches the fish, the other one comes in to steal the fish, fish transfers to the other eagle. The AI learning and deep learning will then switch focus to the eagle that has the fish. Now I have a few theories on how this actually happens. You do have learning systems. I'm thinking that these cameras are going to be adaptable to the individual user and how they photograph. For example, I just got the Nissan Frontier Pro 4X. The transmission has a break-in period that learns the driver. So I'm gonna sit down here by the water. So if you have a camera that is learning what you photograph, it's going to be able to pick up, learn your habits, how you photograph, what subject you tend to focus on, and it'll better track those subjects. Another good way to think about it is like on iPhone. Now I have an iPhone, so for all those Android users, I can't speak for them. But you take a picture of an eagle and you slide up, it'll actually tell you bald eagle. I'm thinking there is going to be a system inside the camera, hopefully, that will tell us that it recognizes the species. That way, it learns the patterns of that animal or whatever you're shooting. Now, I'm really reaching here, but if the expectation that they're setting is new, advanced, deep learning, never before seen, they're dropping all these really big terms. These are the types of things that I would be expecting, especially since we're already seeing them in the tech world today. And really, getting old, that's my knee. That's probably the biggest thing that this press release put out, is the ability for a deep learning camera that's going to have action tracking or action priority features so that we can get better, sharper images. And speaking of sharper images, they're going to be advancing in the image quality section. So I guess they put some work into the in-camera noise reduction. Now, if you're a professional photographer or if you're an amateur photographer, I'll tell you this: most professionals turn off in-camera noise reduction because we rather would have that control in post, especially with things like Topaz Labs, as well as Lightroom's denoise feature, which has done phenomenal work, especially in doing batch denoise. I just shot the Aurora Borealis and I was batching almost 1,000 images for time lapses with the Lightroom denoise. So that denoise feature in camera is something maybe I'll have to test once I get my hands on it, because yes, my name already is in for pre-orders. Now for some final thoughts. Canon is going to be putting out the developmental cameras, and they're going to be tested during the Olympics. That's at least what the rumors are. That's what everything I've been hearing. I do have one connection at Canon. Whether or not I'll be able to get my hands on one, I don't know, at least for testing. Like I said, I do have one. I have my name in there for pre-order, so I will get notified when pre-orders drop, but I do plan on reaching out and actually trying to get my hands on one. So some final thoughts. The R1 is coming. They're trying to get it here in 2024. If they are released in 2024, it's going to be a very limited number, and it's going to be towards the end of the year. They have already dropped the price of the R3, I think, by $1,000. So I'm going to assume that this camera is going to come out to around $6,000-7,000, somewhere in between those two numbers. We also are getting the Holy Trinity. We have a new CMOS sensor, we have the Digic X processor, and a new Digic accelerator. Now for that CMOS sensor, we don't know how many megapixels that's going to be. For wildlife and nature landscape, I would love to see a minimum of 45 megapixels, but it could be like the 1DX Mark II, Mark IIIs, or like the R3, where it's in the 20s. And we also have to think, with all this deep learning, advanced AI, new sensor, new processor, all this stuff, Canon has had some overheating issues. So are we going to have overheating issues? How big is the battery going to be? I've been holding on. I got 5 1DX Mark II batteries that I've been holding on to, hoping that they'll still be, functional as backups with the R1. With all this new tech, I'm thinking I'm going to have to get all new batteries. And lastly, the big kahuna of the press release is the camera's going to be able to have deep learning subject tracking. So again, when we're out there shooting wildlife, hopefully the deep learning part of it is actually learning the subject that we're shooting, its movements, its, which direction it's going. If it's going from, how would you guys see this? Well, we'll just say from this side of the frame to the other side of the frame, and it's going in between brush, trees, whatever. The tracking, it knows, the camera is going to know what the subject is, follow it through that, and as maybe it comes back into a clearing, it's still in focus. Let me know in the comments below. Have you already put your name in to be one of the first people who gets notified for the pre-releases, or are you waiting to see if they get all the bugs out and if all the hype is actually worth it, or are they setting the expectations way too high and maybe this is going to be a flop. Let me know below what your guys' thoughts are, what your predictions are, whether or not you plan on switching to Canon, upgrading, or whatever your plans are. Like this video, subscribe if you'd like to, and I'll see you guys in the next one.